Okay, so today we're working on a carburetor. As you can see, this is number 4505382. It's a Walbro off of a M16S motor. It's not working particularly well, so I went ahead and looked to see if I could get a new carb. New ones of this particular carb, aftermarket, were around 50 bucks. So we're going to try something a little different. I found this carb online for about $15, I think. And as you can see, the main difference is the choke is in the wrong spot. Everything else pretty much lines up. It's got the nozzle on top, which this one does not have. But other than that, I think it is going to work okay. I just have to get this switched around. So first thing I did was I pulled those off. There's the screws. You also notice, if you look closely, there's a ball bearing. The ball bearing goes right into that hole there, and there's a spring underneath it. So we can pull this out. If you can zoom down in there or not, from the angle maybe. But right down in there is a spring, and that ball bearing goes on top of it. And then that little catch right there is in the way. I thought about just flipping this around and going this direction, and that might work. However, it does stick out a little bit further this way, but I think I can use that back hole if I need to. Instead, I'm actually going to go ahead and see if I can switch these pieces out altogether and go from there. So the other thing, if I do decide to switch it out this way, I will have to drill a hole or create an indent like this indent here in another spot. I think just so that way it stays up and out of the choke mode, like it doesn't fall down into it. But I'll be back in a minute and show you how that's going. Okay, so I pulled it out, and as you can probably see, there is a ball bearing in this one as well, right there, the same spot. I haven't put the ball bearing in yet, but you can kind of see how it's got that mark right there as well. Kind of goes around. As far as the choke plates go, they look pretty similar. However, this one is slightly smaller, and the holes don't quite line up. So I'm going to try to use the new one with this, since it is designed to fit in that particular spot, and see if I can make that work first. That way we're not leaving too many gaps on the sides, which I don't think is good for it. So, and then if that works, then I'll go ahead and replace that ball bearing there back in this. I think the way to put this in is you go ahead and you get it to that point there. I think you actually get the ball bearing in there first, probably. I don't know yet, we'll see. But I feel like if you can get it to this point here, you flip it over, then the ball bearing can go into that gap, and then you flip it back around, and then it'll hold it in place, and you can get it past that point there. At least that's what I'm gonna go ahead and try to do. So I don't know if you can tell or not, but I had to make these holes slightly bigger, so I used a 5/32 drill bit. I just kind of stuck it in the vise like this on the side, and kind of stuck the drill bit through, and then just kind of picked up on it a little bit just to give it just a little bit more of an edge, and then did the exact same thing on this side. Again, it's not very noticeable, but it gave me the clearance I needed, because those two holes didn't exactly line up with it. What was in there? Well, you get the idea. I have not put the ball bearing in yet. I'm going to do that now and see if we can get that figured out. So yeah. Okay, it's almost all together. So what I did was I set the ball bearing just right inside here. It didn't even have to go down the hole, and then I pushed this in until it was touching the ball bearing on this side, and then on the other side I just used a small screwdriver and pushed down on that ball bearing as I was pushing on this, just to get it to go in, Once it gets past that point, then you want to flip that over, like I said before, because what ends up happening is that ball bearing gets stuck in that hole there if you're not careful. And so as you're pushing it in, once you get past this point here, you just simply flip it up like that, slide it all the way, and then once you get close to the end, you can flip it back around. The ball bearing will stay where it is, and then you can push it all the way through. Didn't tighten those down yet because I wanted to make sure, like I said, it's a decent fit, but I wanted to make sure they were both in slightly before I tightened it down. A couple key things: make sure you use a screwdriver that fits that hole really well as you're pushing down on it. You don't want to strip those out if you can avoid it. Yeah, looks like it's a pretty tight fit overall. If you can tell, the sun's in the way, but it's definitely tighter than that one there, which is the original. So we'll see if this fixes my issues. And just so you can kind of see, this is the spring that's down in there, down in that hole right there. Had to use a pick to get it out. Use that into the pick right there, kind of pulled it up a little bit. Once I got it up a little bit, then I was able to turn it over and get it out. And the ball bearing, of course, goes on top of that spring. But really, it could go on. You can go on either side. Maybe not on this particular one, but I think on this one it could go on either side. I think it's fairly adaptable to multiple things. Another thing to note is that this diameter of this bar here is slightly larger than the original one that I had, so this will not go into that carburetor. But just put the screws in there so I have them for safekeeping. Okay, so here's the carb on the Kohler 16 motor. Couple things. It actually runs really well. Before, when I was trying to go really fast, it would just start to like bog down and it wouldn't work at all. So it definitely was the carb, or configuration of the carb, I guess. On this particular one, to switch it out to, I mean, you can see that the choke works pretty well. One thing I don't like about this one in particular is it blocks the bolts, and so you really have to reach back in there to get them. You can kind of do a half turn each way, but it's a little more difficult to get the carb on and off than the original one was. But I think other than that, it's going to work out pretty well for me. So I would highly recommend, instead of spending $50, purchasing a $15 carb and kind of doing the same thing I did here. Okay, one final modification I need to show you. It's not too big a deal, but this plate here was catching on that, and so you have to bend that top end up because it was all that flat and it was hitting this plate here, so it wouldn't allow it to, the governor, to do what it was needed to do. But as you can see now, the choke is fully functional, and it does sound really good.